After 10 weeks away, Cristiano Ronaldo is back with the old lady. beIN Sports Serie A correspondent Tancredi Palmeri will join us for a look ahead to the return of Il Calcio. March Madness in August, the Champions League considering a single elimination format to finish off the rest of the campaign, complete with a Final Four tournament on a neutral ground. And who's going where for how much? The one thing we can count on during these, quote, uncertain times, the latest transfer rumors on the transfer train. Welcome into Sports Burst. Hello, very good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be joining us. Thanks for tuning in to Sports Burst. I'm Andres Cordero. As always, send us your thoughts, your comments, your questions. We'll try and get through as many of them as possible on the show today. Our first touch is in Italy, where the Italian Football Federation have announced that Serie A will remain suspended until June 14th. And that announcement comes after Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte signaled, or actually signed, an order last week banning all sporting events through that same date, June 14th. For more on this, we welcome in our beIN Sports Calcio correspondent, Tancredi Palmeri. Tancredi, good to talk to you again. Good to see you. Just fill us in. What exactly is going on in Serie A right now? It looks like a mid-June date for a restart, but nothing confirmed.
Buongiorno everybody today, even if it's not a good giorno, at least for the weather here. But there is some breaking news. It's not easy to break down for people watching from abroad what is really going on in Italy. There is some very late break news a few minutes before we were going on air, because the scientific committee set up by the Italian government to give the green light to football has just given the green light to the collective training for all the Serie A clubs. Now, as you mentioned, the sports events are still suspended until June 14 to fit what is the calendar of the Italian government that, for example, has reopened last Monday everything except theaters and movie theaters that will open on June 15, so to fit to that calendar. But this news of really few minutes ago is very important, because for the first time it's not only giving the green light for collective training, also it is saying that it is allowed to do so even without self-isolating, even without putting all the squad in quarantine training, so players can go back to their place after training in these 2 weeks. It is what Serie A was expecting. It's still not talking, obviously, about how the competition will be, but it is exactly the move that was waited to prepare the next step for the league. Then it will be according to the number of new cases on how the so-called epidemic curve will go in the next weeks, to see if the government will release even more the situation on Italian football, or it will be more strict.
So, Tancredi, just to be clear here, with that go-ahead, that green light for teams to start training collectively again, what is that start date? Is that effective immediately? Is it as of today? Is it as of tomorrow? When do they start?
By tomorrow. From yesterday, it was possible, but only if the whole squad was locking themselves into training ground, not leaving it. A measure that no teams had accepted except Parma, because they were saying psychologically is affecting too much the players. They were saying after 3 months lockdown, as everybody else, they can't stay apart their families. So basically, Serie A was opposing this rule at the cost of not resuming the league, basically. Instead, with this decision, the things are changing, and it is waited literally in the very next minutes. Also, the main big decision that is about the quarantine for the team in case that a new coronavirus case is found. And apparently, but we are literally waiting any minute by now a confirmation. Apparently, this scientific committee has agreed that even if a new coronavirus case is found, the squad in that case will be put in quarantine, but continuing to training, which, as you all can imagine, is again another measure to get closer to a restart, because if you put the whole squad in quarantine without possibility to train, then that is postponing every time 2 weeks more the resuming of the game.
Is there any talk about the format? Because just to touch on the date first, we knew that Serie A were hoping, just like La Liga, are hoping to return June 12th. That's not going to happen in Italy because the ban has been pushed back to June 14th, which means that the most likely date for a restart, assuming everything goes fine, would be on the 20th, the weekend after that 14th. But is there any talk about what format they'll use? Will they change the format at all in order to close out the season?
Look, Dre, a month ago, the Italian FA president went to the Serie A president and said, look, as we have a shortage of time, as UEFA is saying that by August the 3rd, we have to shut the domestic season, as UEFA also is saying that by May 25, we need to communicate them how will be the format to complete the season. So let's make it simple. Let's use less fixtures as possible. Let's do playoff and play out. Serie A clubs completely pushed away that option. But now today it has been a pretty, I would say, full of events day. First of all, there was a letter. Well, we know since yesterday that UEFA postponed this deadline to communicate the change of format from May 25 to June 17. That's a very interesting first point. Second point, UEFA President Ceferin sent a letter to Lyon President Ola affirming that the August the 3rd deadline to shut the domestic season, the local league, local competitions, it's a recommendation and not a mandatory deadline. This is changing basically everything because, for example, Italian FA wanted to ask 2 weeks more in August to keep playing the Serie A. And third, in spite of these good points, along the day, the Italian FA president, talking with Serie A clubs, got from them a reopening on the possibility to do playoff. It's only about the possibility to do playoff. It is literally a situation changing day by day, ongoing.
Okay, Tancredi Fameric, thanks for breaking some news with us here on Sports Burst this morning. Always nice to hear from you, my friend. Stay dry. It looks like it's a bit of a wet day out there.
Thank you, Saki. I will go just like Cristiano Ronaldo that today was back to training. Yeah. I will pop back into my supercar and drive home. I'm already home, so that won't be difficult.
Great to see you again. As Tancredi just mentioned, Cristiano Ronaldo returning to Vinovo, to the Juve training center today for tests following a 2-week quarantine in Turin. He's actually been away from the team for some 10 weeks now because he was in Madeira, I believe, in Portugal, with his family during his quarantine. We'd like to welcome in Sports Burst correspondents Gary Bailey and Kaylin Kao, who are with us. So welcome into both of you. Cristiano back in training. We know Leo Messi is back in training with Barcelona as well. They don't even play in the same country anymore, but we refuse to let this duopoly die. So let's assume that both La Liga and Serie A will find a way to get to that finish line, and that the Champions League will also reach its conclusion. So we'll begin with you, Kaylin, because you laughed at my joke. Which of these two extraterrestrials will finish the year with more trophies?
You actually paid me to laugh at your joke. This is why I work with you on Tuesdays. Yeah, I mean, you look at the stats right now. I mean, Juve sitting in first ahead of Lazio by just 1 point. Should they win that league? I think so. They have the players to do it. They've showed the skill. They've showed the goal scoring ability. But then you look at Barcelona. Barcelona have had a very kind of up and down season. They've been shown glimpses of brilliance, and they have had breakdown in defense, then the board, then the whole government within that Barcelona community. I mean, it's always in the news for all the wrong reasons. Now, I'm not saying, because I know I'm going to get hammered for saying this, I'm not picking my favorite team, but I think Real Madrid this season has been the better team. They've been more consistent. They've allowed less goals. They've been scoring. Yes, Benzema was in a goal scoring drought. Hazard's been injured. But if you're looking at just league play, I think Juve kind of pushes that a little bit more than Barcelona this season. Then you go to Champions League. Can Juve go far in Champions League? They've done extremely well. I think that they finished the group having 5 wins in that group. Obviously lost away versus Lyon. So that next leg, I'm not sure how the Champions League, I think we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that, into this show, how that's going to play out. But Barcelona's been doing okay. I mean, round of 16, they drew 1-1. So I feel like they're pretty even, but if I'm going for league play just alone, I think Juve will win. I think Real Madrid is going to take it if season does start back up. And then Champions League, I mean, it's literally anyone's game. Atletico just knocking out Liverpool, that's a whole beast of its own.
Gary, you actually listen into Messi himself, who said maybe part of this quarantine could have a silver lining for Barcelona, because playing the way they were, he didn't think they were good enough to win the things that they're setting out to win. So do you agree with Kalen here that Cristiano Ronaldo stands a better chance of finishing the season with more trophies?
Oh, yeah, 100% agree with Kalen. Always do, but in this case, especially so. Juve, I think, have got a better chance of winning their league than Barca have. I think Real Madrid, as Kalen said, they're a real threat. We haven't even mentioned the cup, that Juve are in the semi-finals, and they drew 1-1 away with Milan. So they, in fact, Juve could be going for the treble, because they have a decent chance in European Champions League, probably as good as any. But to answer your question, Dre, with Suarez fit enough, and I assume he's fit enough to start playing, that combination of Suarez, Messi, Griezmann's pace up front, that is Barcelona. If they can get it together, as they did on occasions in the early part of the season, if they can get that together, they can win European Champions League. And then, if they win European Champions League and Ronaldo wins Cup and League, UCL trumps the Italian double every time. So Messi's real hope here is to win the European Champions League. Otherwise, Ronaldo's double might mean that he gets the better of Messi this season.
Just handing Ronaldo and Juve the double is Gary Bailey. It's good competition this year with Inter, even Lazio are in the fight, where it's Barcelona just have to get over Real Madrid.
What do you think?
I actually do think it's going to be Cristiano Ronaldo, because I don't think anybody's taking the Serie A away from Juventus. But it's a better race this year than it has been in the past. And again, the cup is probably going to be what tilts it in Cristiano's favor. A couple of your comments here. Jorge Wolf Hurtado writing June 15th seems like a reasonable date. That's, again, is the date in which the Serie A could return, but it probably won't until the weekend. Is June 15th, I believe, a Monday, so it'll be until the 20th when the Serie A does get back on their way, best case scenario. Wolf Hurtado also saying that Tank is the GOAT when it comes to everything Serie A. It's the reason we check in with him whenever we have a little calcio talk. So let's actually move ahead, because something you referenced a moment ago, Kalen, UEFA considering a plan to finish the rest of this season's Champions League in a single elimination format from August 8th. Now there's 4 second leg matches still remaining from the round of 16. Once those are done, the rest of the competition would be single elimination. Semi-final, the final would be played at a neutral ground, essentially a Final Four, which reportedly would take place in Istanbul. Gary, we'll begin with you here. Do you like this idea for finishing off the Champions League? And could this be just really exciting, considering it's one and done in the case of the semifinals and the final at a neutral ground?
Absolutely, I agree 100%. One of the things that always bugs me, Dre, about the quarterfinals and semis, and even the last 16, obviously, is this sort of careful. You're away from home, you don't want to concede, you're defensive. I mean, even sometimes the home sides, especially if you think of Atleti used to sort of almost settle for a 0-0, a draw at home as a decent result. So the 2 legs never really got going, I felt, until halfway through the second leg, when it was now it's do or die. Here we get a cup final atmosphere. Now the final itself is always a one-off, so I've always wondered, why shouldn't the other games be a one-off as well? If they are now, I'll be super delighted. Everyone's a cup final. These are all great teams there. I think, in fact, it might go so well that they might make it a regular thing every year and have a one-off game. What do you reckon, Kalen?
I absolutely love this. As a player, I would love this. As a manager, I would love this. And as fans, I would love this. This is, like you just said, a final every single game. And you look at the teams that are left, imagine one-off matches. Yes, it's probably going to be behind closed doors, so this might make it a little bit more exciting. Obviously, without that fans, you lose that electricity, but the teams that are left and players are back injured, back from injury, they've had time to rest and recover, so it's literally your best squad out there. I love it. I absolutely love it, and I completely agree with you, Gary. I could totally see this maybe lighting some fires in some people's brains, being like, can we keep doing this year after year? I think too, when those stadiums are full, can you imagine just one-off games, how electric those stadiums would be, how insane the fans would be? I mean, how many cervezas people would be drinking? I love it. I think it's amazing. I think it's brilliant. I am all for this.
Listen, I've already read a couple of comments from George Wolf Hurtado, but I'm going to do so again because he just referenced one of my favorite animes of all time. Said Messi and Cristiano are Tsubasa and Yuga in real life. That's Captain Tsubasa. I'm here for it, so I'll read 10 of your comments if they're all about anime. Brendan Burns is one of the regulars, says Ronaldo will have more trophies, so he agrees with the two of you. Also adds that the Champions League winner will be Paris or Bayern this season, so he doesn't see Messi or Cristiano lifting the big-eared trophy. And Ryan Moran, another one of our regulars in the chat. Barca and Madrid have had many negatives and positives during the season, but as of right now, Barca's on top. Take your best guess. Anyone could win it. Guys, something that you referenced, Gary, is I actually do have questions about once the genie's out of the bottle. We'll go to you, Caitlin, because you look eager to say something here. But once the genie's out of the bottle with 5 substitutions, one-off Champions League matches, it's going to be brutal to try and put that genie back in the bottle, isn't it? Because if those things work, how are you going to all of a sudden eliminate the 2 substitutions when the new season starts up?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many moving parts just to get games back. And the Bundesliga is the guinea pig for it. We saw it this past weekend. Was it different without the crowd? Yes. But there's going to be some things that we really like, and there's going to be some things that we really hate. The 5 substitution, I mean, I don't see it going anywhere past this pandemic. I think, is it needed for players for rest and recovery and proper travel and trying to jam all these tournaments in? Yes. As a player, would I like it? Not really. Can you change tactically? Yes. As a manager, you can slot in 5 players and be like, right, let's just sit back defensive. Let's close this game out, or put in an attacking threat and go after a game if you're down 1-0. So I think that rule is really only good for this instant right now. I think these one-off games, I totally could see them going back to the drawing board and reevaluating if this works and if fans like this and our games more intense. I could totally see this one sticking, and I like what Gary said. It adds a little bit of more excitement because it's both teams can't sit back in. They have to go at it, and I think it would be absolutely brilliant. And I want to jump to there was one fan, I forget who it was, Dre, that you had just mentioned in the comments about PSG going all the way. Yep. The only reason why I don't think they will this Champions League, and I thought that they were, is because now their league's done. So they literally have no preparation into match play and match fitness, which is completely different. So I think that is going to kill PSG in Champions League. I hope it doesn't, because they have an absolutely brilliant team, but I'm going to go against the grain a little bit on that one in the comment section. Gary, the German Bundesliga returned this past weekend, all 9 games played behind closed doors. How much did you watch? What did you take away from Das New Normal, which is German for the new normal?
I watched everything, Dre. I was so excited. To be honest, when the game got going without a crowd, my sort of energy levels dropped a bit, because football isn't the same without crowds. I think we all accept that. But I was able to find the excitement in the players, in the energy between the players, because you can hear, I didn't understand what they were saying, obviously, but you can hear the shouts back and forth, and you could pretty much work out who was telling who to mark and close down. And so I got some energy out of the players themselves and the coaches. There were some great goals. I mean, Haaland kicks it off, scoring a fantastic goal. And I think there was nearly 3 goals per game in the Bundesliga, and it was done brilliantly. It was a perfect example for everybody else to follow. And I think without crowds, just a tip for those who are watching, just try and listen and watch the players, because with crowds we get drawn into what goes on. But now you have a unique opportunity to really focus on what goes on the pitch. So do I miss the crowds? Absolutely. But am I happy they're back? Yes, please.
All I have to say is I had a hot cup of coffee on a weekend watching live sports, and live football at that. I was so happy. I watched all the Saturday game, and then Sunday only tuned in a little bit just to watch my boy Alphonso Davies absolutely light it up once again. But I just love it. You could still see the passion in the players. I mean, Erling Haaland got ripped apart in the media for an interview he did at the end of the match. But I mean, his performance on the pitch is absolutely phenomenal. I think it was taken out of context. I just wanted to touch on that, because I think sometimes the media tries to spin things to make these players look like they're not doing things the right way, and they are. So I just wanted to mention that really quick, because I saw you guys touch on it on Sports Burst yesterday, which was brilliant with Gabby. But yeah, no, it's football. It's back. They're setting the standard. They're showing us that it is possible. I'm hoping that all these players can stay safe and no one ends up testing positive for the coronavirus. And so we can see more teams and more leagues follow this protocol. And I hope it happens. And I mean, if the French league is looking at this and the Bundesliga ends up doing this successfully, they're going to be like, what were we thinking closing down our league and our season so early?
So we're going to have to move kind of quickly through this one, but I do want to squeeze all of this in. So the empty stands got us thinking there are potential pros and cons from a player's perspective. For some, it may eliminate a source of pressure and distraction. For others, it might actually eliminate a source of motivation. You're both former pros. So in other words, some players are helped, some are hurt by it. So I'm going to throw out a name. You tell me if they're helped or hurt by it. We'll start with you, Gary Bailey. Gareth Bale.
Oh, he'll be helped. I mean, I just feel so sorry for the guy when he plays at the Bernabeu especially. He knows the fans don't like him. He knows they're out to get him. Then he goes away from home and those fans are out to get him anyway because he's the opposition. So I think for Gareth to play in front of an empty stadium, he'd be the happiest guy in the world.
Kaylin?
I'm going to go against this. Gareth Bale thrives in pressure situations. I mean, you see his social media. He doesn't care what anyone's saying. He doesn't care what anyone is slamming about in the papers. I mean, he's still golfing in the off season. I don't know. I think it's just an act. I think he does thrive under it. Big players like that usually need fans and the cheering, whether it's booing, whether it's not, but you thrive at it. You get this like weird feeling inside you that just wants to go out there and prove those people wrong. Now, maybe I do agree with you a little bit, Gary, at the Santiago Bernabeu, that it might just be a little bit too much to overcome that. So is a move maybe in the future for him, but I mean, he's sitting on a pretty paycheck every week. He absolutely loves living in Madrid, so he's laughing at this point. So I'll agree to disagree with you, Gary.
We'll do one more. We'll start with you, Kaylin, quickly. Paul Pogba.
Ooh, I think his time at United, he needs to leave, but he thrives on it. I mean, that guy, if you look at, I don't know him personally, but if you look at his social media, he loves attention. He loves like all the gear. He loves football. He's passionate about it. That is someone that needs the fans behind him. And I think right now he is the scapegoat. So I think he is like a little bit of a Bale there. I just think he needs a new stadium, a new set of fans to start thriving again.
Gary?
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, Paul's all about that. He's a showman. He just wants to be out there strutting his stuff, you know, looking good. If he's got no crowd to play in front of, he's going to be looking around going, what am I doing here? There are certain players who come to life a little bit more with a big crowd. He's certainly one of those. So if you're giving me the choice between Pogba and Bale playing without a crowd, I think Pogba would suffer more. I think, you know, as Kaylin says, maybe Bale can laugh it off, maybe he can't. Pogba would die without a crowd.
Gary, did you thrive in a crowd or no?
Loved it. Loved all the abuse,
Me
Kaylin.
too.
The things they would sing and throw at me all non-stop.
Me too.
We'd ask you to repeat it, but we don't have a bleep button available. Kaylin, Kyle, Gary Bailey, thanks as always for joining us on Sports First. We'll catch up with you guys later this week. In some cases, I think Gary, you'll join us tonight. Let's go quickly through this transfer train because there are a couple of stories we want to get through. Italian sports site Calcio Mercato claiming that Gonzalo Higuain could be headed to DC United. Higuain recently returning to Turin following his quarantine in Argentina. That site claims that Higuain could join his older brother Federico in DC. Federico Higuain joining DC United as a free agent in January after leaving the Columbus Crew. It was around the same time that Wayne Rooney left the nation's capital for a return to England. And so potentially Gonzalo Higuain is a permanent replacement for Wayne Rooney at DC United. German striker Kai Havertz scored a brace in Bayer Leverkusen's 4-1 win over Werder Bremen this weekend. In doing so, the 20-year-old became the youngest player to reach 30 goals in the Bundesliga. And it's almost easier to name the clubs that aren't reportedly interested in Havertz. Here's some of the ones that are: Liverpool, Barcelona, Manchester United, Bayern Munich, Arsenal. You get the idea, everyone. Where should he go and why is it Liverpool? We'll leave that for another show. And PSG's Layvin Kurzawa has also been seemingly linked with everybody. The latest is Atletico Madrid. France Football claiming that Atleti wants Kurzawa to compete for that left-back spot with Renan Lodi. Now, worth noting that Atleti basically didn't have a left-back to compete with Lodi the entirety of the season. They used Saúl Ñíguez in that position. 4 or 5 different players would rotate. Some of the right-backs, Arias, for example, would play on the left. We're just about out of time for this edition of Sports Burst. Be sure to join us Friday night for the next edition of Clásico at Home. We look back on a Clásico from 2004-2005. That's Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And of course, join us later tonight for the second edition of Sports Burst. Sports Burst PM is on beIN Sports. My guest from the Chicago Fire, U.S. International, Jonathan Bornstein, will join the program. Thanks as always for spending time with us on Sports Burst. See you later tonight. Goodbye.